Good morning, and welcome to the School of Education Convocation. I'm Deanna Keith, and on behalf of the School of Education, I am honored to welcome you here this morning. We're so excited as a School of Education faculty to host this convocation because we have an incredible speaker for you today. Brandon Fleming is going to present and share his story with you. And why this is especially exciting for the School of Education faculty and family is because Brandon Fleming is an LU alumni. Yes, right? Woo! So he has sat where you have sat. Although actually maybe not exactly where you're sitting, because this building wasn't here when Brandon was attending Liberty University, but he understands what it is to be preparing for final exams and projects. And how many of you are preparing for graduation? Yes, that's right. So he understands that. Congratulations. But he has an incredible story of abounding grace and God's incredible grace that brought him from an at-risk youth to a college dropout to walking across the stage at Liberty University. It's an incredible story, and we are just so grateful that Brandon has returned home, as someone said just a few moments ago. He's returned home to share his story with us. And so if you'll just join me in prayer. And then we'll move on. Thank you. Dear Heavenly Father, I just come to you this morning, and God, we just thank you so much for this beautiful day. We thank you for those students that are here joining us within the School of Music, and we thank you for all of those joining us online, Heavenly Father. And we just thank you so much for Brandon Fleming. We thank you for Brandon and just his heart and his commitment to you, dear Lord. We thank you for all that he is doing to empower and inspire and transform other lives. We ask, God, that as we now move forward and we listen to Brandon's story, that you'll just remove all distractions from our minds, that you'll clear our minds and open our hearts, God, that whatever the message that you would have us take, whatever the lessons you have us to learn during this convocation, God, that we'll leave just more focused on you, on your word, and just intentionally focused on the calling that you have for our lives. And dear God, we love you and we thank you for loving us like you do. In your precious name, amen. All right, so if you have a seat, and I am going to turn it over to Dr. Christina DeWitt, who will tell you in a moment that Brandon is her child, and there are many School of Ed faculty that have claimed Brandon as one of their own, but Dr. DeWitt, there is no better person than Dr. DeWitt to share and give a formal introduction for Brandon Fleming. So thank you so much, Dr. DeWitt. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. It's so good to see you, or not be able to see you because I can't see you that well because y'all are dark, but you can see me. I hope you're having an awesome day. As Dr. Keith said, it is such an honor and a privilege to stand up here to introduce one of our own alumni. It just, my heart is just, Dr. Keith and I were saying over on the side that we just are holding back the tears of excitement and joy to be able to share Brandon's story with you today and all that he's doing in the world and just representing us. So I met Brandon early on in his college career in the School of Education, and it didn't take long for us to know that we had a bond. Maybe it was by our commonalities, or maybe it was by the differences, because when you meet Brandon, or if you've seen pictures, clearly we are of different ethnic groups, but something was very clear, that our passion was very similar. And so I feel like we both have always strived to set the bar high for those that we work with. Those of you that have been in my class know that's important. Encourage others around us, and just work endlessly to see other people succeed. And I've always advocated for the different projects that Brandon has been involved in, and so that he can go out in the world and advocate for the youth of today. And so many people know that Brandon is one of many, but very special to me and my own child. He's not born born of me clearly, but he is definitely part of my family and has stayed with my family, and we try to visit each other on all of his travels. But he has some amazing accomplishments that I want to share with you, and accolades at this point in his career. So currently he's the assistant debate coach at Harvard University and the founder of the Harvard Diversity Project, which is a nationally acclaimed pipeline program that recruits, trains, and feeds Black youth into the prestigious Harvard summer residency. He leads an executive board in Atlanta that has raised over $300,000 to enroll over 50 students of color into Harvard's summer program, and they have all gone on full scholarship thanks to his efforts. We've seen him in the news with his unprecedented achievements that went viral when he had one of his students win at the summer program. He's been featured in places like CNN Headline News, Huffington Post, Ebony Magazine, and many, many, many more places. Brandon has set out to establish a one-of-a-kind organization to become known for distinguishing and positioning Black youth to the pipeline into the Ivy League school. It's been a radical accomplishment for him, and he has had his first student accepted on early admittance to the Harvard College class of 2023 on a full scholarship. His story and his voice and his passion have impacted lives, not just in Atlanta, but all over, including prisons, academic institutions, and earlier this year at the United Nations General Assembly. So let's give Brandon Fleming a warm Liberty University welcome, a true scholar that he is, our colleague and champion for Christ.
Wow. Liberty University, it is so incredible to be home. From the moment I got here, the love has just simply been overwhelming. But I got to get this out the way. So I know whenever alumni come and speak to you, I know you're pretty sure by now you're tired of hearing, oh my God, this used to be this and that used to be that. Well, oh my God, like I don't even recognize this place anymore. I mean, as I'm walking them, the Schilling isn't here anymore. The School of Education is somewhere else. I mean, wow, what incredible growth this institution has been fortunate to be able to experience. And I'm so privileged and honored to be a product of this university. And it's so incredible to be able to come back and share with you right now. Again, my name is Brandon Fleming. I'm the assistant debate coach at Harvard University and the founder and CEO of the Harvard Diversity Project. Very quickly, there's just a couple of things that I want to share with you while I'm here. And I want to give you, I want to kind of set a framework and provide you with three takeaways that I hope to elucidate as I share this personal anecdote that is my testimony and my story. The first is the dream is not mine, and the dream is not yours. We are only its steward. That's the first. The second is that God does not call those who are qualified, but he qualifies those whom he calls. That's the second. The third is that love is the most transformative agent that exists in this world. It's very ironic the way that I've even landed in education. If you imagine the worst student you've ever seen in the classroom, that was me. No, I'm serious. If you ever seen little Day-Day or little Daquan in the classroom, who couldn't sit still, who couldn't get anything right, was constantly getting kicked out, that was me. In fact, my disciplinary record from middle school was so extensive to where it was 12 pages long. And interestingly, I never had a teacher that was able to look beyond what I showed them on the outside to be able to identify and activate the potential that lied latent on the inside. And that is particularly the power that an educator possessed, but I never was fortunate enough to encounter a teacher like that. And out of all the teachers that I had, nobody even stopped for a moment to ask questions as to why I behaved the way I did. And I came to school and I was such a disgruntled young man, but none of my teachers were interested in knowing what potentially made me that way. And quite honestly, the reason why I behaved in that manner is because I dealt with so much trauma at home that then manifested in disruptive behavior when I went to school every single day. And just to give you an idea of what I had to endure every single day when I got home, is that I went home to a stepfather who was a Baptist preacher by day, and he was a coke addict by night. And so every day I would come home to this man, and I remember like it was yesterday, although it was years ago, and his eyes would be bloodshot red when he got home. And for some reason, he chose me and identified me to be the subject of his abuse. And so every single day I would have to endure lashes from him that were oftentimes so bad to where my mother would have to come and rub Vaseline on the welts that remained on my back. And after having to endure that and carrying that every single day with me to school, finally, I stood there and I asked the question, and oftentimes I struggled with this idea of religion because I could not fathom why God would choose me to have to endure such abuse. What did I do? Why me? Why did I have to go through that? And so finally, when I was liberated from this man, my mom enters another relationship. And in this relationship, I become the subject of molestation from the woman who was supposed to be my babysitter. And I don't share this with you because I'm comfortable airing my vulnerabilities with random people. No, I don't feel comfortable doing that. But I share this with you because I need you to understand that there are probably people sitting in this room right now who feel like your failures or your insufficiencies or your background disqualify you from being used by God. And that's not the truth. Because sometimes God will choose who is seemingly the most unlikely candidate to confound even the most wise. And those are the individuals that he will use to be the mouthpiece of what he wants to accomplish and what he wants to do within the earth for his people. And so I found myself carrying this burden with me, carrying this weight with me every single day when I went to school. And so I was at risk. And quite honestly, a lot of people did not feel like I was going to make it. A lot of people did not feel that I was going to graduate. And the trajectory I was on, that was very likely, until my life was saved by basketball. I was very fortunate to encounter coaches that decided to take me under their wing, and they felt that I had a promising athletic future. And so I started playing basketball, and then this time, I was involved with drugs and gangs and violence and all types of nonsense. But when these coaches took me under their wing and showed me that I had a promising future, I let all that go, and I wanted to focus on playing ball. And so I was very fortunate to be able to play for a coach at the time who actually played here for Liberty University many, many years ago. And for that reason, I was fortunate to be able to be recruited by Liberty University since I was a junior in high school. And so I ended up moving away after my mom got deployed to Iraq, and I had to move to South Carolina, and my physical body started to decline. And so I started to have knee issues, and now I've been being recruited by all these different schools, and I made a last-minute decision to come to Liberty University. There was a change in coaching staff, so when I got here, I had to try out. And when I tried out during that summer, it was around August, and we had a training camp. And at this training camp, I wanted to show the coaches that I belonged on this team. Not only do I belong on this team, but I deserve a starting position. And so here I am. At this time, we were in what used to be the Schilling Center. And so we're playing ball, and we're doing 5-on-5, and I want to show all the coaches that I belong on this team. I deserve this spot. And so I find myself all of a sudden one time on a fast break, and I'm coming down one end of the court, full speed, with all the adrenaline pumping through my body. And I see parallel to me on the other side is the 7-foot center that we had at the time. And so I have all this energy, all this adrenaline pumping. I made up in my mind, I'm about to dunk on them. Right? And so as I'm charging full speed at the basket, I explode with everything in me, and all of a sudden I feel a rip right here in my knee. I tore my patellar tendon, and just like that, my career was over. And in that moment, I was thinking, why me? So many people said I would never make it to college. So many people said I would never make it to be able to play Division I basketball. Here I am, I finally made it, and now it's being taken away. Why me? And so I was never academically inclined. I hated teachers, I hated school, and so quite honestly, I did not want to be here. And so I subsequently became a college dropout, flunked out of all my courses, went back home, and I spent the next 2 years of my life working in a vitamin factory on the assembly line. And it looked something like this. The assembly line that I worked at in that plant was about as long almost as this stage. And I would have to start on one end, and there would be these vitamin boxes with bottles in them. And I would have to take down the boxes and break them open, and I would have to pour them into the machine. And after I poured those bottles into the machine, then I would have to sprint over here to the middle of the machine where there was these gel vitamins that were in bins. And I would have to pick up the bins, and I would have to mix up the vitamins to separate them. And I would have to lift it up over my head and slam it down, and lift it up and slam it down and mix it up a little bit more. Then I'll have to pick up the bin over my head, climb up this ladder. And when I got to the top of the ladder and I poured the vitamins into the machine, then I'll have to climb back down. I have to sprint all the way here to this end, take all the caps, screw the caps on, and do that over and over and over again for 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. It was the most painful experience of my life. And all of a sudden, one day, one of my coworkers, who were about 2-3 times my age, I was 18 at the time, she looked at me and she said, "Boy, what are you doing on this assembly line?" I told her, I said, I dropped out of school, and that's why I'm here. She said, "You did what?" She said, "Do you realize what all these people in this plant would have done for the opportunity to acquire what you just willingly relinquished?" And that's when it set on me all of a sudden. And I had a moment, just like Jonah, when he was fleeing from the presence of God, when God told him to go to Nineveh. And he had a moment where he decided that he had run so far away from the presence of God that he just needed to give it up. And at that moment, I felt the same way. And I felt that I needed to give it up. And so I decided that I was going to attempt suicide. I went back to my home at the time, and I actually overdosed on sleeping medicine. And I blacked out, and I woke up all of a sudden in a hospital bed with tubes attached to my arm as they were pumping the they were pumping the pills out of my system. And I remember looking around me, and nobody was there. And all of a sudden, tears started to flow down my eyes as I was looking up at the ceiling at what had become the lowest point of my life. And at that moment, I made a commitment to myself, and I made a commitment to God. I said, God, if you will get me out of this and create an opportunity for me to do something with my life, I promise you, I will do it differently. And it happened. My mom was actually that miracle that happened, because my mother, who was in the military and getting ready to retire, she actually had what's called the GI Bill, which I'm sure you're familiar with. And instead of using that GI Bill for herself, she used it for her son, because she saw me in such a low place. And so I was able to use the GI Bill and come back to Liberty University 2 years later. And I get here, and I have this newfound ambition, and I have this drive that I've never experienced before for anything except for athletics. But now I want to do well. I want to succeed academically. But all of a sudden, I started learning about all my learning gaps and deficiencies. And so I remember like it was yesterday. I came here, I'm like, okay, I want to do well, right? And so I'm meeting with my academic advisor, and we're sitting down going through this laundry list of majors, right? I'm not the most academically inclined, so I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna pick the easiest one. So we're looking through this litany of majors, and all of a sudden I'm like, computer science, nah, I'm not that smart. Math, nah, I'm not gonna do that. All right, I'm looking through all these majors. Finally, bam, I found it. It was English. I said, well, I speak English, right? You know, how difficult could it be? And so I'm like, bam, English, that's the one I want. This is gonna be a breeze. Man, I'm sitting in these classrooms, listening to these professors use all this sophisticated rhetoric and jargon, and now they want me to read the Odyssey, and they want me to read the Iliad and British literature and all that, and I can't keep up with this stuff. And so I found myself in one of my classes, one of my professors pulled me aside, and she said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "You don't do any work, you don't turn in the assignments, your writing is crap." And she said, "Why are you here? How can I help you?" And I said, well, the truth is I do want to be here, but quite honestly, I don't know how to read well. Something very transformative happened to me while I was here, when I was fortunate to have professors like Dr. Karen Pryor and Dr. Matthew Tolles. And I remember taking modern drama and being introduced to playwrights like August Wilson. And I remember being in Dr. Pryor's class who introduced me to MLK in a way that I had never seen before. Because yeah, we recognized him as a civil rights leader, but she helped me see him as a scholar. And something very powerful happened for me in that moment, because when you think about me as a young black man and the trouble and the stigma that plagues my community, is that the fact of the matter is young people often can't be what they can't see. And so for me growing up, you know, I never identified as a scholar because I don't see many scholars that look like me. And so finally, when I'm introduced to someone who's a black scholar, now all of a sudden it opens up my mind and it opens up my worldview, and I start to see myself in a way that my self-perception was too narrow to see before. Why? Because I was fortunate to attend a university that values and understands diversity and inclusion. And for that reason, it wasn't just about academics, it was about identity. And it was about my ability to find myself in the classroom. And so I found myself going through this intellectual metamorphosis where all of a sudden now I get so passionate about academia that I just want to read and read and read. I don't want to do nothing. I got to the point I started reading books about Malcolm X, and then I read books about Frederick Douglass, and all of a sudden now I'm determined to become a scholar. I didn't want to do nothing. I didn't want to play basketball. I locked myself in my room. At the time I was working for the LU bookstore. I took my little paycheck and I went and bought books in just about every subject you can imagine. I locked myself in my room and I just read and I read and I read, and I didn't want to do nothing else. I didn't want to play basketball. I didn't want to socialize. I didn't want to fraternize. I didn't want to do nothing. I didn't want to have a girlfriend. Okay, I'm lying. Okay. I'm lying. I'm not even, there was 1 or 2 times where, anyway, that's besides the point. You get it. You get what I'm trying to say. I was so determined.
I was so galvanized because of the experience that I had in the classroom here. And all of a sudden, I became angry. And the reason why I became angry is because I started to think back throughout my life. And I asked myself, why is it that I've been in school from K through 12 and no teacher was able to do this for me? It blew my mind. I could not get, how is it that I had so many teachers year after year after year, and not one of them had the ability to tap into the faculties of my mind and incite curiosity and help me see the world in ways that I've never seen it before? How is it that I never had a teacher who could create such a heuristic experience in the classroom for me to where I felt like I could be a scholar and I even wanted to be one in the first place? I was just talking to some of the faculty yesterday. How do you take an at-risk youth and inspire them to be something and care about something that they never cared about? That's a skill. And so I thought to myself, how is it, like, isn't that the teacher's job? How is it that I've encountered this many teachers and none of them could create this experience for me now? But I realized, obviously, there was nothing I could do about that. But there was something I could do going forward for somebody else. I ended up joining the debate team here at the university because I was inspired after watching the movie The Great Debaters. And as I was watching this movie, I was like, oh my God, like only if this were really a thing, right? And then all of a sudden I'm walking down the hall at the university and I see the Liberty University Debate Center. And so I go in and I try out for the debate team, and now I'm on the team and I'm debating. And honestly, my career or my tenure on the debate team was very short, because I started to have this transformative experience after I experienced the power of debate. And I was attending this church that was at the time at the foot of the mountain across the street in this garage. It was called the Ramp Church. And at that church, I came across about 5 kids who were struggling in school. And their parents were sharing with me that their kids were on the verge of dropping out, that some of them were failing, that they were struggling. And I could relate to that, right? And so I said, you know what? I want to meet with them on Saturday. So I met with them on Saturday, and I started to teach them everything that I was learning in class, and I started to teach them everything that I was learning on the debate team, and I started to teach them everything that I was teaching myself. And all of a sudden, something happened with those kids. Because I get there one Saturday, I meet with them Saturday after Saturday after Saturday, and I get there one Saturday, and I walk in, and I say, okay, let's begin. And I look up, and it's not 5 kids. It's 10 of them. And I'm like, who are y'all? And where did you come from? And they said, oh, well, these are our friends. We thought they might want to learn too. And so bet, let's do it. And so I start teaching them, and I get there the next Saturday, and it's not 10. It's like 15. And then it goes from about 15 to 20, then 25, then 30-something, then 40-something. And all of a sudden, 50 inner city youth are voluntarily showing up for Saturday school. Where do you see that at? And something happened with those kids that shook the entire city. So I started meeting those kids and I started teaching them, and in just 9 weeks, not 9 months, but in just 9 weeks, those kids went from a 1.2 to a 3.5 cumulative GPA. Every single one of them achieved the AB honor roll for the first time in their lives. And all of a sudden, the superintendent and administrators and news reporters are coming to me, and they're wanting to interview me, and they're wanting to have conversations with me, and they're asking me, what in the world did you do to get these kids to perform at such a rapid rate? We tried everything. We've tried remedial programs. We've tried to put them in supplemental instruction programs. We tried everything. What did you do? I said, I taught them how to find, cultivate, and use their voices. And not only that, but this is where I started to understand my power as an educator. Because a lot of people were perplexed at what I decided to call this program when I started it. When I started this program with these kids who had a cumulative 1.2 GPA, I decided to call them scholars. And people asked me, someone even asked me, a news reporter asked me in an interview, she said, why do you call these kids scholars? It doesn't seem like the most fitting title for this program. And I told her, I said, the reason why is because when I see these kids, I don't address them according to what I see on the outside. I address them according to what I see on the inside. And so what happened is that when I called these kids scholars, quite honestly, none of them even really knew what that meant. And they shunned the idea of being associated with this term, right? And so I would call them scholars, say, good morning, scholars. And they'd be like, But all of a sudden, I noticed that over time, their countenance started to conform to my language. And I called them scholars, and all of a sudden it resonated with them, and I put bow ties on them, I put blazers on them, and I changed the way they felt about themselves, and I changed the way they saw themselves. That is the power that we have as educators. And so all of a sudden I'm running this program, and I'm sure all of you are familiar, if this is School of Education, you've got to be familiar with Ron Clark. He's a hero of mine, always has been since I started studying here and started to have this inclination toward education. And so I was watching Ron Clark, saw the movie about him, read his books, and I always longed for the opportunity to simply be able to shake his hand or have a conversation with him. And so all of a sudden I'm running this program here in Lynchburg, and I get this strange phone call one day from a man named Ron Clark. And he said, "I've been following your work for the past several years. I want you to come to Atlanta to meet with me." So he flew me down the next day. I went down to Atlanta, and we sat down and we talked, and he looked me in my eyes, and he said, "I want you to move to Atlanta, and I want you to teach at my academy." And so I did. I moved to Atlanta. I started teaching at the Ron Clark Academy, where I was fortunate to be able to train over 30,000 educators from all around the world. And while I'm there, I also start the speech and debate team. And when I start this debate team, it's very interesting because these kids became so highly trained at debate. This is a middle school. They became so well trained in debate that competing at middle school tournaments was no longer competitive for them. And so I decided they started to get real boastful and full of themselves. I said, okay, y'all think y'all good, huh? The next tournament you enter is going to be a high school tournament. We'll see how you do there. They were like, ooh, so scared, right? I said, okay, bet. Y'all going to get your butts kicked. Watch. And so I found this high school tournament. I said, bam, I need to teach my kids a lesson. I need them to be challenged like they've never been challenged before. And so I entered them into this high school tournament. And all of a sudden we get to the high school tournament and we walk on the campus with these little small kids, and everybody's looking at them and laughing like, what are these kids? Did they come to observe? I know they didn't come to debate. And so everyone's looking at these kids like they don't belong, right? And then all of a sudden we get in the debate rounds, and the coaches can't actually go into the rounds. We have to wait in the lounge. And we wait in the lounge together, and then the kids come back afterwards and report to us and tell us how they did. And so I'm sitting in that lounge, I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I know my kids getting it right now. They're going to learn today. They're going to stop being so boastful, and I need them to be humble and all this stuff. And all of a sudden, I hear somebody kick in the door, and they said, oh my goodness, did y'all see those middle school kids? And I look up and I'm like, yeah, they're giving it to them, ain't they? She said, they are whooping everybody. And I said, no. I said, no, that was not the plan. But we accomplished something that had never been done in the National Speech and Debate Association. As a middle school team, we went undefeated at a high school tournament and did that a number of times. And at one of those tournaments, there was actually an instructor who was there from Harvard University, from the Harvard Debate Council. And she was there, quite honestly, to recruit, students. She ended up recruiting me. She had a conversation with my students. She said, who in the world is your teacher? I need to meet him. And so they brought her to me and introduced her to me. She said, I think there's something that you would be perfect for. And I said, okay, I'm willing to try anything once. And she said, I think you should teach at Harvard. I said, excuse me? I said, Howard? she said, no, Harvard. She sent the recommendation up to the university, and they decided to appoint me to the summer faculty at the Harvard Debate Council's summer residency, where we have about 400 gifted young scholars from all around the world. I mean, it's so competitive to where in China you have to take a test in order to qualify for China to send a group of students to the program that we have at the university. And so I went up there, it went extremely well, and it went so well to where they decided to actually appoint me to the full-time faculty at the Harvard Debate Council and appointed me as the assistant debate coach for the Harvard University debate team. And while I'm sitting there at the university, my dreaming starts to kick in. Because here at this university, we are trained to be champions. That means not only are we trained to dream, but we're trained to act. And so I was there on campus, and I noticed that there was significant lack of African American representation. And I was very inspired by a young black girl who was there on the campus studying. There are two, the program is for several weeks, and then it concludes with two tournaments. One is an oratorical tournament, and two is a debate tournament. The first is to see who's the best speaker. The second is to see who is the best debater, who can take all of the information, all of the skills, and synthesize that and apply that in the form of debate, right? And so this first tournament comes, the oratorical tournament, and this girl blows it away, this young black girl. And I was so discouraged by the way kids made her feel, because people looked at her to her face and said the only reason she won is because she's black, and the judges felt sorry for her. They said if given another opportunity, she would never be able to do it again, because there's no way she had the same education level as the rest of them. And when that young black girl could have walked away with her head held down, instead, she had this resolve about her that was so inspiring. And I sat back and I watched her return the next day for the debate tournament. Not only did she win the first tournament, she won the second as well. And I looked at her and I said, oh my goodness, this could be more of us. This could be more of our young black kids. Because the truth is, for the African American community, anything that we have not accomplished is not due to ability, it's due to access. And so in that moment, I felt a responsibility. I felt conviction where I could have been complacent because here I am, I finally made it, or I could have at least thought that, I made it to, an Ivy League campus and I'm here teaching and instructing and I could have been real complacent, but I felt this conviction on the inside of me that said, do something. And quite honestly, I'll be completely real. I didn't want to do nothing because I didn't want to be the angry black guy. So I didn't want to, be the one kicking down the door with my fist up, yelling black power. That's not welcomed everywhere. So I didn't want to be that guy, but I felt compelled. I felt that I had to do something. And so I ended up in a meeting with my supervisors there on campus, and I sat down with them and I had a conversation. And I said, we need to do something about the lack of diversity on this campus. And I gave this long, discourse on why we needed diversity and inclusion and how we needed to reach out to more black people, to invite them, blah, 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 all that, right? And I just dropped that on them. And quite honestly, I had no idea how they were going to respond. I was shocked by the way they responded to me, because my boss looked at me and he said, we agree. What do you want to do? I said, I don't know. I said, I came with all problems, no solutions, and so I said, what, give me some time to think about it and I'll let you know. And so I went back home to Atlanta and I designed this pipeline program that would train, recruit, and feed students of color into the university on full scholarship. And they said, Brandon, you can do this under one condition. You have to raise all the money. So I said, okay, I'll do it. I had the most challenging year of my life because we went back home and we launched this program where I invited 20 community leaders to be on the executive board. And here we make this big announcement to 25 kids that they're all going to Harvard the next summer. And it goes viral everywhere. It's all over the news. It's everywhere. And so now all of a sudden, I have to raise this money to send these kids to Harvard. And it was the most difficult experience of my life because I would go from meeting to meeting, from business to business, corporation to corporation, bank after bank, and all of them would tell me no. And so we get to about March, and they're leaving in just about 4 months, and we have $0 that we've raised. I mean, talk about a leap of faith. And it was the most challenging experience of my life because I had to show up every single Saturday and teach those kids as if nothing was wrong. But I knew that God was going to see this vision and this dream through, and that he was going to give me the resources that I needed, and he did. Because we had, then Chick-fil-A came on board, gave us $20,000, then UPS, then Coca-Cola, and finally we made it happen. 25 black kids we sent to Harvard University to study during the summer. And when we get there, the same experience that I had just a few years ago with those students from the Ron Clark Academy. We pulled up on that campus, and everybody looked at them as if they did not belong. 25 black kids pull up on an Ivy League campus with a whole bunch of kids who are from prep schools and private schools, and they looked at them as if they did not belong there until those kids got in the classroom. And when they got in the classroom, they not only won the tournament at the end, they dominated that tournament. We took 25 kids who have never been exposed to debate before in their lives to compete against hundreds of students who have been doing it ever since they've been in middle school. We dominated that tournament so much that in the final rounds of the tournament, only 16 students make it to the finals. Out of the 16 students that made it to the finals, 10 of them were mine. It shocked the world. After my student won that tournament, it went viral. It became a national media sensation. And we had an opportunity at that moment to send a message to the entire world about what young, gifted black kids can do if they are simply given access and opportunity. And I find myself now on the other side of all of this, and I ask myself the same question I asked myself before. Why me? When I look back over my life, it does not look like I should have been the one who was chosen to lead this particular movement. But isn't it amazing that even when I was here, because of the spirit at this university that teaches us to be dreamers, that teaches us to be champions, it's so interesting because when I was living on McConville Road several years ago, I was living in a dilapidated apartment when I was taking care of my little brother because my mom couldn't take care of him anymore because he was following down my same tracks. And I'm taking care of my little brother, and we're surviving off food stamps and my minimum wage job working 20 hours a week. And I knew because of my dropping out of school that I would never have an opportunity after being at Liberty to study at another prestigious university, definitely not an Ivy League because of my GPA. But something within me still had the audacity to dream. I couldn't even afford a bed, so I made a pallet for my little brother and I to sleep on the floor. And nestled in the corner of my dilapidated apartment was a banner. It was a Harvard banner. Because I would fall asleep every single day dreaming of one day being able to visit that campus. I had no idea that years later, I wouldn't visit that campus as a student. I would visit that campus as an instructor. But it's all because of this place right here. I had that sometimes we can have dreams that don't even make sense. But what happened for me in those moments was that there was a seed of hope and faith that was planted in the soil of my spirit, fertilized by serendipity, and called forth by God to blossom into bountiful blessings that would be used to edify the earth. That is precisely what all of us are called to be. But what we have to understand is that when we ask ourselves why, when we ask ourselves, am I called to lead? Here's the thing. You can choose to serve, but to lead, you must be called. But how do you know that you're called? How does one know that they're called to be a leader out of all the people who look like they should be the chosen ones? How do you know it's you? The reason why you know it's you is because of what you have had to endure. When I look back over all the pain that I've had to endure over my life, and I find myself in this moment right here on this stage where I'm able to share with people like you, I look at my entire story a lot different now. Now I don't look at it as God punishing me. Now I realize that entire time, even when I didn't understand, even when it was painful, that this entire time I was merely on the potter's wheel. And he was molding me and shaping me for the task that he would give me to show his people just how great he is. And I believe the same thing is happening for many of you. It doesn't matter what you've been through. It doesn't matter what your insufficiencies are. You can and you will be used by God. Every single one of you here has a calling, And God is going to see you through that calling. And I shared this story with you because this is where we're able to see, yeah, we see the accolades, we see things that people have accomplished, but it's important that you understand our humanity. And that is what you find in stories like mine, is my ability to share with people that if God did it for me, he can most certainly do it for you. I am so grateful for this illustrious university that positioned me to be successful and showed me what potential that I had. I'm so grateful for all the professors that I've been fortunate to encounter, because if it had not been for this university, I would not have had the audacity to dream. I am so grateful for everybody here who has poured into my life and who has nurtured the gifts that God has given me. But not only that, I'm even more grateful that you all have created a platform for me to come back and share it with you. Liberty University, I love you. Thank you so much.
Wow. Wow. I think you're getting an encore, Brandon. Wow. Thank you so much, Brandon. We have been so blessed by your words. And, you know, I don't know, we didn't really take a poll of everybody who was here. I know when Dr. Keith said, where are all our seniors? Well, a lot of our seniors are out student teaching, so that's probably why we didn't get a big crowd on that. But whether you're here to study to be a teacher, a social worker, a person in government, I think what we can take away from today is that we have to have Christ's eyes when we look at other people and provide ways of access. And just look at people like they are deserving of God's grace. And Matt, what a story of grace. Brandon, that was so incredible. Like, as a teacher, that just moves me, because nothing makes you feel better as a teacher who sees that your student has grown up and they're doing things that are so impactful. And that was one of the words I put down: resilient, impact. Those are all incredible things that you've done, Brandon, and we are so proud of you, and thank you for sharing your story with us. A verse that I really want to share with you, honestly, this is a little book that I used to have when I was teaching 5th grade many years ago, and I kept it on my desk, and in the little minute, there's a moment of silence each morning, I would read these little passages. And there's one that really stuck out to me, and I looked at it again last night when I was thinking about Brandon, because it always talks about how you can see your students and how there are so many things that God has in store for them, no matter their circumstance. Moses stuttered. Timothy had stomach problems. Jacob was a liar. David had an affair. Abraham was too old. John was self-righteous name. And it goes on and on. How many stories in the Bible of God used all of those people. So again, whether you're studying to be an educator, a social worker, a nurse, someone in government, wherever you're studying to be, have Christ's eyes. Look at people as potential, their potential. And this is the verse I want to wind up with. 1 Samuel 16:7, but the Lord said to Samuel, do not look at his appearance or at his physical stature, because I have refused him. For the Lord does not see as man sees, for man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart. So Matt, no matter your circumstances, no matter your family pedigree and name, your education, Brandon has just really brought that concept out. Find the potential in other people. Look at them through Christ's eyes. How can I help other people to become who God wants them to be? Brandon, thank you so much again for coming. I have a little homework for Brandon as he was talking about the diversity pipeline. Brandon, we need to talk because we want more people of different races and ethnicity in teaching so that we can, again, be representative in the teaching field. of the students that we teach. So Brandon, at lunch, I'm going to be picking your brain about those opportunities too. Let's close in prayer, and then after prayer, I think there is one announcement slide for us. Let's close in prayer. Lord, thank you so much for this time that you have allowed us to come together, Lord, and I just pray that you would continue to work through Brandon, Lord. The impact and the influence that he's having is just incredible, Lord. Just use him and use all of us in this room, Lord. We just give our lives to you, Lord. This is the time of year when we celebrate your sacrifice for us, Lord. Your death and your resurrection, Lord. Just the life that you've given us through your blood. I just pray that you'd be with us. Help us to use what you have given us, Lord. Help us to be good stewards of the things that you have given us. And again, just as we go out today, Lord, help us to remember to have your eyes. In your name we pray. Amen. Okay, so this is a quick announcement. There are some opportunities for you all to, again, be involved in professional development. So CEC and ASU has a meeting. You'll see it up on the board. DeMoss Hall, April 29th. Wow, it is really getting close to the end of school. I think, is graduation a week from tomorrow? I mean, a month from tomorrow? Not a week, sorry. But you know, as we're trying to figure out all the graduation issues, it's coming up. It's coming up. Okay, is that the only slide that we have? Is that it? We're good? Thank you all so much. Enjoy the weather out there, and remember, see others through God's eyes. Have a good one. Thank you so much.